The Jedi Order has survived for 25,000 years, but the Sith came horrifyingly close to destroying them multiple times throughout history. From ancient wars that killed hundreds of Jedi in single battles to thousand-year shadow conspiracies that dismantled them from within, the Sith perfected the art of Jedi elimination. Today, we're breaking down every major Sith plot that nearly wiped out the Guardians of the Galaxy, starting with the one that established the blueprint for everything that followed. The Great Sith War kicked off in 3996 BBY when Exar Kun declared open warfare against the entire Galactic Republic, mobilizing his Sith forces from Yavin 4. Kun's Brotherhood pulled thousands of Dark Jedi and Sith warriors into coordinated assaults on multiple Republic worlds simultaneously, the kind of overwhelming force that makes you wonder why the Jedi didn't just pack up and leave. But here's where it gets brutal. The Brotherhood deployed Sith battle meditation and dark side rituals that corrupted entire Jedi enclaves, turning masters and Padawans against each other in bloodbaths where nobody knew who the enemy was anymore. The Jedi expected conventional warfare. Instead, the Sith used alchemy to mutate creatures into biological weapons and corrupted Jedi through artifacts that poisoned their connection to the light side. The catastrophic toll kept climbing. Ossus, one of the most important Jedi strongholds in the galaxy, got completely annihilated when Kun triggered a supernova using ancient Sith superweapons. Entire libraries of Jedi knowledge and hundreds of Jedi got vaporized because one guy found a weapon he shouldn't have been allowed to touch. And here's the kicker. Ulic Qel-Droma, a fallen Jedi who joined Kun, had insider knowledge of every Jedi defense, every stronghold location, every vulnerable point in their entire network. The Jedi were fighting a war where the enemy knew exactly where to strike because he'd spent years training in those very temples. This was the moment the Sith figured out that turning the Jedi's own people against them beats direct confrontation every single time. But if you think one corrupted Jedi Master is horrifying, wait until you hear about the Sith triumvirate consuming entire planets of Force users in a single feeding frenzy, the first Jedi Purge, the Sith Triumvirate. The Jedi thought they'd survived the worst after Revan fell. They were wrong. Between 3956 and 3951 BBY, 3 Sith Lords systematically dismantled what remained of the Jedi Order using methods that made open warfare look merciful. Darth Traya, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Sion, the Sith Triumvirate, didn't just kill Jedi. They hunted them like animals, turned their own beliefs against them, and proved that psychological warfare beats lightsabers every single time. Here's how it worked. Traya branded every Jedi who served under Revan as tainted by the dark side, giving the galaxy a convenient excuse to let them die. She posed as a Jedi scholar named Kreia, infiltrated the council, and ran fabricated meditation sessions where traumatized Jedi confessed their locations. Then she sent Sion and Nihilus to finish them. Darth Sion personally assassinated 47 Jedi Masters hiding in the unknown regions. The darkly poetic part? He killed them with their own lightsabers to make it look like infighting, fracturing what little trust remained in the Order. Nobody suspected a Sith was even involved, but Nihilus was the nightmare. In 3954 BBY, he showed up at the Qatar Enclave, where 300 Jedi had gathered for an emergency council. He consumed them, all of them, instantly, through pure force drain. The only survivor was Mitra Surik, and she only lived because she arrived late. By the time this purge ended, the Jedi Council had been reduced to a single member before Qatar's destruction eliminated him too. The Triumvirate proved something the Sith had been learning for centuries. You don't need armies when you can manipulate, infiltrate, and drain. But if you think that's horrifying, the next plan makes Nihilus look restrained, because at least he killed people one planet at a time. The Bomb of Ruin, the Thought Bomb. The Sith built a weapon that required dozens of dark-side practitioners channeling energy into a single point to annihilate everything in the blast radius. And yes, they were stupid enough to use it. The Thought Bomb was developed during the New Sith Wars, a 1,000-year conflict where the Sith kept losing because they couldn't stop backstabbing each other long enough to actually win. The Brotherhood of Darkness figured the solution was a superweapon so devastating it would wipe out the entire Jedi Order in one shot. The catch? You needed multiple Sith Lords standing together, pouring their life force into a containment field for an extended ritual. fail, get the timing wrong, and the whole thing becomes catastrophically unstable. In 1000 BBY, Sith Lord Scare Khan lured the Jedi Army of Light into a final confrontation on Ruusan. What the Jedi didn't know was that Khan had prepared the thought bomb as a last resort. When the battle turned against the Brotherhood, Khan initiated the detonation. The ritual required the Brotherhood's leadership to sacrifice themselves. The bomb consumed Sith and Jedi alike in an instantaneous implosion that vaporized all Force-sensitive beings caught in the blast. Entire battalions of Jedi and Sith perished in the catastrophic feedback. The blast created a permanent wound in the Force, trapping the souls of everyone killed in an eternal prison of torment. Here's the thing. The thought bomb killed nearly as many Sith as Jedi. The Brotherhood of Darkness sacrificed their entire command structure to use it. Strategic genius. Master Valentine Farfalla survived, arriving too late to prevent the detonation. One Sith also walked away from Ruusan with a very different philosophy about how the Sith should operate, and his plan would actually work. The Rule of Two, the Shadow Plan. Darth Bane looked at the smoking ruins of Ruusan, saw 100 Sith Lords and nearly 200 Jedi vaporized by the thought bomb, and had the most psychopathic epiphany in galactic history. What if we just stopped existing? And I can prove it worked better than any war ever could. In 1000 BBY, Bane established the Rule of Two, a doctrine mandating exactly 2 Sith, master and apprentice, should exist at any given time. The plan required centuries of calculated invisibility before attempting galactic conquest. Not decades, not when we feel ready, generations of patience, while the Jedi forgot the Sith were real. The patience alone is insane, but here's where it gets brilliant. The Rule of Two wasn't just hiding, it was a meat grinder that forced every Sith to be stronger than their master or die trying. Bane's own apprentice, Xana, had to prove herself worthy through constant trials and assassination attempts during her training. Every generation, the survivor became more dangerous than the last, while the Jedi assumed they'd won. The result speaks for itself. During the new Sith Wars, the Jedi actively hunted Sith across the galaxy. By the time of the prequels, the Jedi Council genuinely believed the Sith had been extinct for a millennium. They went from, "We're fighting Sith right now," to "Sith our ancient history our archives barely mention." The lineage continued unbroken from Bane to Sidious across 1,000 years. Bane to Xana, Xana to Cognis, Cognis to Millennial, down through Tenebris, Plagueis, and finally Palpatine. An unbroken chain of masters who successfully turned galactic-scale revenge into an exact science. But the absolute masterpiece was how they weaponized Jedi complacency against itself. The Sith became legends, then myths, then forgotten completely. The Jedi stopped looking for threats they believed no longer existed. By the time they sensed the dark side rising again, it was already too late. If you think invisible Sith Lords sound dangerous, the Stark Hyperspace War proved they could manufacture entire conflicts just to test their strategy. The Stark Hyperspace War, the prelude. The Stark Hyperspace War doesn't get enough credit for being one of the most successful Sith test runs in history. In 44 BBY, Darth Tenebris looked at the Republic and thought, what if we just funded terrorists to kill Jedi for us? And it worked horrifyingly well. Here's the thing. The Stark Commercial Combine wasn't just some random pirate gang. They deployed 300 modified freighters with ionic pulse cannons specifically designed to disable Jedi starfighters. Military-grade weapons platforms funded by Sith money, and the Jedi walked right into it. Master Plo Koon's task force got absolutely shredded. 80% casualties. The Combine used fake distress signals to lure them into asteroid fields rigged with explosives, and the Jedi, being Jedi, responded to every single distress call because that's what they do. Tenebris knew exactly how to exploit that compassion. Send out a cry for help, wait for the Jedi to show up, blow them to pieces. 53 Jedi Knights died trying to mediate this conflict. Multiple masters were critically wounded, and several were ambushed during what should have been peaceful negotiations. The whole thing was a masterclass in exploiting Jedi protocol, and here's where it gets truly diabolical. Tenebris posed as a Republic Defense Committee advisor who specifically recommended deploying Jedi negotiators to resolve the crisis. He sent them into kill zones while pretending to help. This was the Shadow Plan in full effect. One Sith Lord playing both sides, orchestrating Jedi deaths while sitting on the committee meant to protect them, and the Jedi suspected nothing. The 80% casualty rate proves one thing. Even this close to the Clone Wars, the Jedi still hadn't learned to suspect betrayal. They walked into traps, assuming good faith, because their entire philosophy demanded it. Tenebris took notes on every single weakness this conflict exposed. Fake distress signals work. Poisoned negotiation tactics work. Putting a Sith in an advisory role works. But if you think rigged asteroid fields were bad, wait until you hear about the Yinchori literally breaking into the Jedi Temple itself. The Yinchori Uprising. The Jedi Temple is supposed to be untouchable, the single safest place in the entire galaxy, defended by the greatest warriors who ever lived, sitting right on Coruscant under the Republic's nose. And in 33 BBY, it got breached anyway. Here's the thing. Darth Sidious didn't just orchestrate some distant conflict and hope it worked out. He weaponized an entire species. The Yinchori were already naturally aggressive and resistant to Force influence, which made them perfect candidates. Sidious fed them military intelligence and resources through intermediaries, turning their natural belligerence into organized warfare. This wasn't a standard military operation. This was deliberate escalation designed to test the Jedi's defenses. The Yinchori launched a coordinated assault across multiple systems, and while the Republic scrambled to respond, Yinchori warriors did something nobody thought was possible. They breached the Jedi Temple itself. Multiple Jedi were killed during the conflict, including Jedi Master Micah Giet and Neshan. The psychological impact alone was catastrophic. The one place Jedi were supposed to feel safe just proved it wasn't. But here's where Sidious's brilliance shows. The entire crisis forced the Jedi to spread themselves thin across multiple fronts simultaneously. Council members like Mace Windu had to personally lead strike teams to Yinchor itself while the temple remained vulnerable. Sidious was studying their response patterns, their deployment strategies, their weaknesses under pressure. He was collecting data, and the kicker? The whole uprising traced back to manipulations nobody could prove. There were whispers of outside influence, of resources the Yinchori shouldn't have had access to, but nothing concrete. Sidious had learned to operate through so many layers of intermediaries that even when the Jedi suspected Sith involvement, they couldn't confirm it. He was a ghost pulling strings they couldn't see. The uprising failed, obviously. The Jedi are hard to kill. But Sidious proved something far more valuable. He proved the temple could be violated. He proved Jedi could die on their home ground. And most importantly, he proved he could manipulate galactic events without leaving fingerprints. The Shadow Plan wasn't just sophisticated anymore. It was untraceable. But if breaching the temple sounds bad, wait until you see what happened when Sidious turned an entire planet into bait. The invasion of Naboo. This is the moment Darth Sidious stopped being a ghost in the machine and became the most powerful man in the galaxy. And he did it without firing a single shot himself. The blockade of Naboo wasn't about trade routes or taxation disputes. It was about creating a crisis big enough to topple Chancellor Valorum and install Palpatine in his place. Sidious orchestrated the entire conflict through his apprentice Darth Maul and his puppet Viceroy Gunray, manufacturing a situation so dire the Senate would demand new leadership. When Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi walked into that conference room on the Trade Federation flagship, they were walking into a deliberate ambush. Droidekas flooded the room, poison gas filled the ventilation system, and the Federation forces had one objective: kill the Jedi ambassadors before they could report back to Coruscant. The Jedi escaped, but barely. Sidious wanted them dead because witnesses complicated the plan. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council was receiving intelligence suggesting diplomatic resolution was possible. They believed it because they wanted to believe it, because peaceful solutions are what the Jedi do. While they debated whether to send more mediators, Sidious was already 3 moves ahead, preparing his Senate speech and lobbying for votes. The manufactured crisis worked exactly as designed. The Senate held a vote of no confidence against Chancellor Valorum. Palpatine delivered his nomination acceptance with perfect false humility, and the Jedi had been so focused on stopping a corporate invasion, they didn't realize they'd just handed the galaxy to a Sith Lord. The Trade Federation deployed a full droid army to invade a single peaceful planet, and the Jedi sent 2 ambassadors. That's the level of complacency Sidious exploited. He'd been positioning himself in the Senate for years, building alliances, gathering favors, waiting for the perfect moment to activate his network. But if you think one manufactured crisis to seize political power was the extent of Sidious's ambition, you haven't been paying attention, because this was just the setup. The real trap was still a decade away. The Clone Wars, the ultimate trap. The Clone Wars weren't just a conflict, they were the single greatest con job in galactic history. Darth Sidious didn't start a war. He built a 3-year death trap and convinced the Jedi to walk into it willingly, smile on their faces, sabers ignited, leading an army that would execute them the moment he gave the word. Here's the scale we're talking about. 3 years, thousands of star systems, countless battles across the Outer Rim to the core. The Jedi Order deployed as generals across the entire galaxy, commanding millions of clone troopers in active combat. Nearly all of the Order's operational focus went into prosecuting this war. That's not a distraction, that's total blindness. They stopped looking for Sith because they were too busy fighting Separatists, and the Separatists were run by a Sith Lord. Sidious played both sides, ensured the war never ended too quickly, and made absolutely certain the Jedi trusted their clones. And here's where it gets genuinely horrifying. Sidious didn't just let the war play out, he personally intervened in key battles to ensure Jedi victories. He made sure they won when it mattered, built their confidence in the clone army, made them believe these soldiers were loyal, all while every single clone trooper had an inhibitor chip embedded in their brain during the Kaminoan growth phases. Biological failsafes programmed to turn them into executioners on command. The Jedi trained with them, fought beside them, trusted them completely, and the entire time, millions of those clones were walking time bombs. Before Order 66 even dropped, the war had already devastated the Order. Jedi died on battlefields across the galaxy. The Battle of Coruscant alone saw multiple Jedi killed when General Grievous turned Palpatine's rescue into a killing ground. The Jedi thought they were saving the Chancellor. They were walking into an ambush designed by the man they were trying to save. It's almost poetic if it wasn't so completely fucked. But if you think the war itself was brutal, wait until you hear what happened the moment Sidious activated those chips. Order 66, 1,000 years of planning, thousands of battlefronts, one command, and in the time it takes to check your phone, the Jedi Order was functionally extinct. Order 66 executed on 19 BBY, and here's the scale we're talking about. Thousands of Jedi dead within hours across simultaneous battlefronts spanning the entire galaxy. The Temple garrison got wiped out with clone battalions storming through every corridor before most Jedi even understood what was happening. Darth Vader personally walked through the temple and slaughtered everyone he found, including Jedi Masters, Knights, and younglings during the opening assault. Just him, and over the following days and weeks, clone legions mopped up Jedi across planetary sweeps galaxy-wide. This wasn't a battle. This was an extermination protocol with military efficiency that would make any general jealous. But here's where it gets surgical. Sidious triggered Order 66 the moment Anakin's fall was complete. The timing ensured 0 Jedi received advance warning. No Force visions, no emergency council meetings, no last-minute evacuations. The clones turned, and the Jedi died confused. Only a handful of Jedi survived the initial purge, and that's out of roughly 10,000. Most survivors were either isolated on remote missions or got lucky with clone units whose inhibitor chips malfunctioned. The survival rate was catastrophic, but here's the thing. Some of those survivors weren't lucky at all. Sidious deliberately allowed Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda to discover his identity at the temple. He knew their Jedi morality would demand they confront him, that their need to face evil directly would override survival instincts. And he was right. Their shock, their disbelief, their emotional need to understand how this happened bought him the hours he needed to lock down Coruscant while clone battalions secured every exit. He weaponized their goodness. The Jedi's greatest strength became their final vulnerability. And if you think thousands of dead Jedi in one afternoon was brutal, the hunt that followed makes Order 66 look merciful. The Great Jedi Purge, the Inquisitorius. Order 66 killed hundreds of Jedi in a single day. But here's the thing, Palpatine wasn't satisfied with that. He wanted every single survivor hunted down, interrogated, and executed. So shortly after the Empire's formation, Darth Vader established the Inquisitorius, a cadre of former Jedi turned dark side hunters whose sole purpose was making extinction permanent. Between 19 BBY and the Battle of Yavin, these Inquisitors systematically eliminated Jedi survivors across the galaxy. The Grand Inquisitor personally killed multiple Jedi Masters, making him one of the most effective agents in the Purge. These weren't random encounters, they were coordinated extermination campaigns with Imperial resources backing every move. The Inquisitorius had unlimited funding, military support, and zero accountability. But the killing wasn't just physical. The Jedi Temple's archives were systematically looted and destroyed, with countless holocrons eliminated to erase Jedi knowledge. Every holocron contained centuries of Jedi philosophy, training techniques, and history. The Empire didn't just want Jedi dead, they wanted to erase the fact they ever existed. The brutality was relentless. Imperial forces hunted Jedi refugees across the Outer Rim, executing survivors in public displays meant to discourage Force-sensitive individuals from revealing themselves. The message was clear: there is no hiding, there is no mercy. Jedi who'd survived the Clone Wars died alone, hunted like animals, with their deaths broadcast as propaganda. The Inquisitorius deployed advanced tracking technology to locate Force sensitives. Imperial probe droids, informant networks, and dark side rituals turned Jedi hunting into a systematic process. The Empire had industrialized extinction, treating it like any other administrative function, with reports filed and operations coordinated through Imperial intelligence. But here's where it gets truly horrific. The Inquisitorius didn't just hunt, they used psychological warfare. They posed as Jedi survivors, sent forged transmissions, and created false safe havens. Imagine you're a Jedi who escaped Order 66. You've been alone for years, terrified, desperate for any sign that someone else made it out. Then you receive a transmission claiming other Jedi have gathered somewhere safe. Survivors responded to these traps and walked into execution chambers. The Empire weaponized their hope, their loyalty, their desperate need to believe they weren't the last ones left. That's psychological warfare at its most sadistic. Order 66 was the shock. The Inquisitorius was the sustained terror that followed. But if you think hunting down the survivors was brutal, wait until you hear about the Empire's plan to make sure Force sensitives never returned at all. Project Harvester. The Sith spent 1,000 years learning from their mistakes. Every time the Jedi rebuilt, they got smarter, faster, more cautious. So Sidious decided to solve the problem at its source. If you can't kill all the Jedi, make sure no one remembers how to become one. The Inquisitorius ran from 19 BBY through at least 4 BBY, and their mission was exactly as calculated as it sounds. Hunt down surviving Jedi, extract Force-sensitive children, turn them into weapons, or eliminate them as threats. The Empire didn't need to murder every Force-sensitive infant in the galaxy. They just needed to ensure none of them could rebuild the Order. They didn't announce their operations. They embedded themselves in Imperial governance. Inquisitors posed as administrators, healthcare officials, census workers. They monitored planetary records, tracked bloodlines, flagged families with Force-sensitive histories. When a target surfaced, recovery teams moved in quietly. Sometimes the child disappeared. Sometimes the whole family did. The Inquisitorius operated across the Outer Rim, Mid-Rim, and Core worlds simultaneously. They captured at least a dozen children, including Force-sensitive infants like Dara Leonis, who was abducted from Lothal and held at an Imperial training facility. Some were broken and trained as future Inquisitors. Some were killed when they proved unusable. Most just vanished into the Imperial machine. Over nearly 2 decades, the Inquisitorius systematically dismantled the possibility of the Order reforming. Every Force-sensitive bloodline they tracked, every child they took, every family that learned to hide their abilities out of fear. That's not just enforcement, that's cultural extinction. The Inquisitors themselves were former Jedi, captured and tortured into service. The Grand Inquisitor, the Fifth Brother, the Seventh Sister. Sidious turned the Order's survivors into the weapon that would ensure no new generation could rise. They knew Jedi training methods, Jedi hiding tactics, Jedi philosophy. They knew exactly where to look and how to break what they found. This wasn't the Sith being cruel for cruelty's sake. This was Sidious learning from every Sith who failed because survivors rebuilt the Order. You can't leave the foundation intact. You dismantle the infrastructure, eliminate the teachers, and make sure the next generation never learns what a Jedi even was. But even this wasn't enough, because Sidious underestimated one thing. You can kill the Jedi, you can hunt their children, you can erase their history, but the Force itself doesn't die, and eventually someone always remembers. The final hunts. By 3rd Yebia, the Jedi Order was functionally extinct, but Darth Vader wasn't satisfied with functional extinction. He wanted absolute zero. Vader's post-Order 66 operations represented the most systematic extermination campaign in galactic history. Scattered survivors who'd escaped the initial purge found themselves hunted across every sector. Vader deployed Inquisitors, Purge troopers, and entire Imperial Star Destroyer battle groups to track down even rumors of Jedi activity. Fortified hideouts were obliterated. Safe houses were burned. Anyone who'd sheltered a Jedi disappeared disappeared. But here's where it gets personal. Master Kirak Infilla, a combat specialist who'd survived Order 66 by isolating himself on a barren moon, faced Vader in single combat. The duel was brutal and one-sided. Vader didn't just kill Infilla, he systematically dismantled every defensive technique the Master attempted, adapting in real time until Infilla had nowhere left to retreat. The fight ended with Vader taking Infilla's lightsaber and bleeding the Kyber crystal red, a deliberate desecration that turned the Jedi's own weapon into a Sith trophy. These operations included deception tactics Vader learned directly from Sidious. Imperial forces planted evidence linking Jedi survivors to terrorist attacks against civilian targets, fabricated intelligence reports, forged communications, even staged massacres designed to look like Jedi vengeance killings. It worked. Planetary governments that might have harbored fugitives instead turned them over for execution. The Sith were still weaponizing politics even in the Imperial era. Vader's hunts weren't just about killing Jedi, they were about erasing hope. When he destroyed a sanctuary, he made sure the locals knew why. When he executed a survivor, he broadcast it. The psychological warfare was deliberate. Make every remaining Jedi understand that resistance was futile, that help would never come, that they'd die alone in the dark. But the cruelty didn't end with death. Vader used Jedi survivors as bait, letting some escape just long enough to lead him to others. False sanctuaries were established and monitored. Coded messages were intercepted and traced. By the Battle of Yavin, known Jedi survivors numbered in the single digits across the entire galaxy. The Jedi Order at its height numbered 10,000. After Ruusan, after the Rule of Two, after the Clone Wars, after Order 66, after the Inquisitorius, after Vader's personal crusade, fewer than 10 remained. From the Great Sith War's opening salvos to Vader hunting down the last fugitives in the Outer Rim, every plot, every deception, every catastrophic toll had built toward this singular moment, the near complete extinction of the Jedi Order. The architects of ruin had won. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.